A grieving father, a stranded soldier, and a single invitation. What unfolded changed 3 lives in the quietest way. Before we begin, if you believe in the quiet magic of kindness and healing with love, subscribe, and let's walk this path together. Snow had begun to fall again. Not the violent kind that howled through trees and threatened to collapse roofs, but the quieter kind, the kind that came down soft as ash and lingered in the air like a held breath. It was the sort of snowfall that made you speak in whispers, even if there was no one around to hear. Caleb drove with one hand on the wheel, the other steadying a thermos of coffee between his knees. The old truck rattled over potholes like it resented every one of them. In the passenger seat, his daughter, Rosie, kicked her boots together and watched the white world pass by, her face pressed to the cold window. "Why do trees look so sad in the winter?" she asked. Caleb glanced at her, then back at the road. "They're just sleeping, is all. Are people like that too? Sad when they're sleeping?" He didn't answer right away. "Sometimes." The bus stop came into view just past the corner market and a shuttered hardware store. There was a figure standing there, almost invisible against the gray, a smear of dull green against the snow. Caleb's foot eased off the gas. Rosie saw her too. "Is that a soldier?" The woman didn't move. She stood like a statue, duffel bag on the ground beside her, shoulders squared against the wind. Her hair was tucked into her collar. A single hand gripped the strap across her chest. "Looks like it," Caleb said. He drove past, just a bit. Then stopped. Rosie turned to him, waiting. He sighed, checked the mirror, reversed 20 feet, and pulled up beside the woman. She didn't look. Didn't flinch. Caleb rolled the window down. "You all right?" She turned her head slowly, as though it cost something. Her face was pale, lips chapped, eyes bloodshot but sharp. That tired sharpness Caleb knew well, the kind that looked through you, not at you. "I'm fine," she said. "Bus already come through?" She nodded. "Next one's not till late afternoon," he said. "You got somewhere warm to wait?" "I'll manage." He nodded too, then looked ahead. The engine grumbled. Rosie leaned across him, small fingers brushing his coat. "We have blankets at home." He looked at her, then back at the woman. "We're headed up north, not far. We've got heat. Coffee. Pancakes, if you're lucky." A long pause. "I don't want trouble," the woman said. "We don't take it with us," Caleb replied. Another beat. She picked up her duffel slowly. There was a slight hitch in her step as she approached. Barely noticeable, unless you'd spent time around limps that tried to lie. She climbed in, nodding a quiet thank you, and shut the door. The truck smelled like old wool and pine. Rosie didn't mind the cold that rushed in, she just stared. The woman smelled faintly of iron and gun oil. "I'm Rosie," she said. The soldier gave her a nod. "Harper." "Like the bird." Harper blinked. "I suppose." Rosie smiled at that, satisfied. Caleb drove on. Silence settled again, not uncomfortable, but wary. The kind of silence where no one wanted to make the first sound that might crack the shell of it. Harper kept her gaze ahead, only occasionally flicking toward the glovebox or the rearview mirror. She hadn't taken off her gloves. "Long trip?" Caleb asked eventually. "Long enough." He didn't ask more. That seemed to earn him a fraction of her ease. They drove past old barns and frozen fields, the world dusted in white. The kind of scenery postcards try to capture but always miss, the quiet grace of decay and endurance. Rosie hummed softly to herself. Harper listened. She hadn't leaned back fully in the seat. Shoulders stayed slightly forward, as if she was waiting to get out again. When they passed the diner, red roof half covered in snow, sign flickering between pen and closed, Caleb slowed. "Best pancakes in 3 counties," he said. Rosie sat up straighter. "With syrup?" Harper looked between them, unsure. "On me," Caleb said. Her answer was a nod, not quite a smile. Inside, the diner was warm and smelled of old grease and sweet batter. The waitress greeted Caleb by name and handed Rosie a placemat with a maze on it. Harper sat across from Rosie, stiff at first. Her hands never strayed far from her lap. Caleb ordered for all of them. Rosie talked. She had a way of talking that filled silences without breaking them. She told Harper about her school project, a paper snowman with real buttons for eyes, and how the school janitor let her feed the stray cats behind the gym. "You ever see a one-eyed cat?" she asked. Harper's lips twitched. "Once. They're lucky, I think," Rosie said. "Like pirates." Caleb sipped his coffee. He was watching Harper when she wasn't looking. When the food came, Rosie handed Harper a crayon from her placemat. It was dull green, the same color as Harper's coat. "For your soldier book," she said. "I don't have one." "Then you can start." Harper took it. She didn't say thank you. But she didn't set it down, either. Pancakes were eaten slowly. Harper didn't speak much, but she listened. She answered questions with as few words as she could. She didn't smile, but her eyes softened, just slightly, when Rosie dunked her sausage into syrup and giggled at the result. Afterward, Rosie slid a folded napkin across the table. On it, drawn in wobbly crayon lines, were 3 stick figures. One tall with a hat, Caleb, one with a big smile and pigtails, Rosie, and one with a green coat and short hair, Harper. The stick Harper had 2 little rectangles at the feet. Boots, maybe. Or boxes. Caleb raised an eyebrow. "She makes those for people she likes." Harper stared at it. Her hand brushed the napkin's edge. "I'm just—" she started. "No need," Caleb said gently. "It's just a picture." Harper folded the napkin once, then again. She tucked it into her coat pocket like it might come in handy later. Back in the truck, the snow had picked up. Wind pushed at the edges of the world, and trees along the road danced like tired ghosts. "Where are we going?" Harper asked, the first time she'd initiated anything. "Home," Caleb said. She didn't ask where that was. But something in her shoulders shifted, less braced, more listening. The driveway was gravel, half covered in snow, with a rickety mailbox that had Caleb's last name stenciled on it in faded red, Low. A small 2-story home sat behind a picket fence that had lost a few teeth. "Guest rooms above the garage," Caleb said as they pulled in. "Not fancy, but warm." Harper hesitated. "Just for tonight," he added. Rosie had already hopped out and run toward the porch, boots crunching. Caleb climbed out and opened the truck bed. "You need help with that?" Harper slung the duffel over one shoulder. "No." She followed him inside, cautious steps. The warmth hit her like a soft slap, jarring and oddly intimate. Inside was simple. Wood floors, mismatched rugs, a wood stove humming in the corner. Pictures on the walls. Caleb with a woman who had Rosie's eyes. The woman was everywhere in little ways. A scarf hanging by the door, a pair of mittens left on a hook, a faded recipe taped to the fridge. Harper noticed. She didn't ask. Rosie gave her a stuffed bear. "He's not great at stories, but he's good at keeping bad dreams away." Harper blinked. "Thanks." "He gets lonely too," Rosie said. Later, when Rosie had gone to bed and the wind moaned low through the trees, Caleb chopped firewood out back. Harper watched from the window. He moved with a kind of sadness, methodical, careful. Not angry. Just tired. She sat on the bed upstairs, unwound the laces from her boots slowly. One ankle was wrapped. Old. Healing. She stretched it carefully, winced. Reached for her dog tags and ran her thumb over them. Downstairs, she heard murmured words. A soft voice, Caleb's, reading something. A letter, maybe. His voice cracked on a few words. Then silence. She stood at the top of the stairs for a long time before she knocked. Caleb looked up from the kitchen table. He'd been staring into his mug like it had answers he couldn't read. "Do you ever get used to someone being gone?" she asked. He didn't answer immediately. Just pushed a second mug toward her. "Sit." She did. The tea smelled like mint. She didn't drink it. He didn't press. They sat in silence again. But it was different now. Less like strangers. More like two people who'd both been in places they didn't speak about. Two people who knew what a folded napkin drawing could mean. Who knew not to ask what happened, but to leave space in case the answer ever came. Outside, the snow kept falling, erasing footprints, softening fences, blurring the sharp edges of everything. Harper stared at her cup, steam rising like a slow breath. She didn't say she'd stay. But she didn't leave. The guest room above the garage had once been Caleb's retreat. Before Rosie was born. Before the silence of an empty bed became a kind of company. Now it sat mostly unused, dust on the bookshelf, a lamp with a crooked shade, and a quilt his wife had sewn when mornings were still shared things. It was plain, but not cold. And tonight, it belonged to a woman who didn't expect a roof that came without questions. Harper set her duffel down with care, as though it might wake something. She took in the room with soldier's eyes, windows, corners, sightlines. A habit that didn't leave just because the uniform did. She tested the door latch, tightened the curtain drawstring, then sat on the edge of the bed. Her boots left faint prints on the rug. Below her, muted laughter echoed faintly through the floorboards. Rosie's voice lifted, telling a story with wild loops and no structure, the way children do when they're too tired to finish but too curious to stop. Caleb murmured replies, low and gentle. The kind of father who made space, not noise. Harper let herself lie back. Just for a moment. The ceiling above was bare wood. The kind that creaked with weather. Her eyes closed, only half. Sleep came reluctantly, like a dog that had to be called twice. She woke 2 hours later in the dark, heart hammering like fists on a door. Her breath caught, tight, hard. It took her a moment to remember where she was. The silence was complete. Too complete. Her fingers reached instinctively for the pistol tucked beneath the mattress. Empty. Right. She'd left it in her duffel. She inhaled, slow and bitter. Outside, wind rubbed against the eaves like something lonely. Downstairs, the stove still glowed faintly. Caleb had left the door cracked open, letting the heat spill upward. A quiet kind of welcome. She didn't go back to sleep. Morning came gray and full of stillness. Harper descended the stairs carefully, like she wasn't sure the house would allow her a second day. Caleb was already at the counter, making eggs that sizzled in a cast-iron pan. Rosie sat on a stool, swinging her feet, reading aloud from a picture book with a dramatic flair that outpaced the story. Harper paused in the doorway. Caleb noticed her, nodded, didn't speak. He just pointed with the spatula to the plate he was already filling. I didn't mean to. Stay as long as you need, he said, without turning. Rosie turned a page with exaggerated slowness. You can stay until Christmas, she announced. Or forever. Whichever comes first. Harper sat. Ate slowly. The eggs were plain, but warm. A kind of honest she hadn't tasted in months. After breakfast, Rosie insisted Harper see her snow fort. Caleb started to object, then relented. The backyard stretched into woods, the kind that had no real edge, just deeper and deeper quiet. Rosie ran ahead, red scarf trailing. Harper followed at a slower pace, crunching footprints into the thin crust of snow. The fort was a mess of lopsided mounds and a fallen bucket, but Rosie beamed like she'd built a castle. We can add a lookout, she said, already dragging a stick like a blueprint. You can guard it. You're good at guarding. Harper looked around, eyes scanning the trees. No one's out here, Rosie said. Dad says the woods are kind, mostly. Harper crouched beside her. Even kind places need watching. Rosie nodded solemnly, like she understood more than she did. I'll bring snacks next time. Guards need snacks. They stayed outside until Rosie's cheeks turned pink and her nose ran. Caleb called them in with 2 sharp whistles. Harper followed Rosie inside, brushing snow off her sleeves. She noticed then, Caleb watching her. Not prying, but attentive. like he was waiting for something to settle. That night, Harper helped repair a loose stair tread. She worked silently, sleeves rolled up, knuckles scarred. Caleb handed her the toolbox without speaking. "You know what you're doing," he said finally. "I've rebuilt worse. Out there." She didn't answer. The house creaked around them. Caleb sat back, rubbed sawdust off his hands. "I've seen people carry ghosts home like gear they forgot to unpack," he said. Harper tightened a screw. "Sometimes it's not just ghosts." "No," he said. "Sometimes it's what you survived to bring them back." They didn't look at each other, but the words hung in the air like something shared. Later, after Rosie was asleep, Harper wandered the living room. A fire crackled softly in the stove. She paused at the mantel. Photographs in mismatched frames, Caleb younger, his wife holding Rosie as a baby. In one, all three stood in front of a treehouse mid-construction. She looked closer at the photo of the woman. Her smile was quiet but deep, the kind of joy people didn't pretend. Beside it sat a folded paper crane. "You're looking at May," Caleb said from the doorway. Harper turned. She hadn't heard him come in. "She made those cranes," he added. "Said they kept wishes alive. She gone long. 4 years. Cancer. I'm sorry." He shrugged. "I still talk to her. Rosie too. Mostly when the house gets too quiet." Harper nodded. Then, after a moment, "What do you say?" He gave a tired smile. "Depends on the day. Sometimes I say I miss her. Sometimes I ask if I'm doing any of this right." Harper sat on the edge of the couch. The cushion barely shifted beneath her. "I used to write letters," she said, "even when there wasn't anyone to send them to." "Still write?" "Not for a while." "Maybe you should." She looked at him. "What would I even say?" "Start with the truth." The fire popped softly, filling the silence that followed. Upstairs, Rosie stirred in her sleep and mumbled Harper's name. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. The sound of trust, half-formed in dreams. Harper blinked once, then looked back at the flames. The next morning, a letter waited on the kitchen table. No name. No address. Just folded neatly, its edges squared like a military corner. Caleb didn't ask. He left it untouched. Harper saw him notice it. Saw the way he deliberately moved past it, as if to say, "I'm not here to read what you're not ready to give." They moved through the day with that quiet between them. Not avoidance, more like space held open for whatever needed to come next. Harper chopped wood in the afternoon. Her movements were precise, economical. Caleb watched from the porch. She favored one side still. The limp wasn't as slight as she wanted it to be. "You seeing anyone for that?" he asked. "I was supposed to," she said. "Didn't. Still can." She said nothing. By evening, the snow had thickened. Caleb made stew. Rosie brought down board games and insisted on teams. Harper found herself paired with Caleb. "I'm terrible at this," she warned. "We've lost to worse," he replied. They played 2 rounds. Rosie won both. Declared herself a champion. Harper laughed. Quiet, sudden. It surprised all 3 of them. Afterward, as Rosie yawned and stretched and declared bedtime a betrayal, Harper carried her upstairs. Rosie didn't protest. "Will you be here tomorrow?" she asked as Harper tucked the blanket around her. Harper paused. "I don't know." "You can be," Rosie said. "Even if just for pancakes." Downstairs, Caleb stood by the sink, rinsing the bowls. "She trusts you fast," he said. "I noticed. You remind her of May, a little. Not how you look. Just how quiet you are before you speak." Harper dried her hands on a towel. "That a good thing?" He looked at her. "I think it is." The house settled into sleep. But Harper didn't. She walked outside, coat zipped, scarf borrowed. The snow had muffled everything, even her thoughts. She stood at the edge of the woods, listened to the hush, pulled the letter from her pocket. She didn't read it, just held it. Inside, a window glowed gold. Rosie's room. Then Caleb's light turned off too. Harper stayed out a while longer. In the quiet, she whispered a name. Not her own. Not Caleb's. One she hadn't spoken since the desert. Then she went inside, closed the door gently behind her, and climbed the stairs to the room above the garage, where the bed still held the shape of someone halfway to letting go. The letter stayed in her jacket pocket for days, folded and creased and stained with a corner of old coffee. Harper never took it out, but she knew the feel of it through the lining, like a splinter she chose not to pull. She hadn't meant to leave it there. It was supposed to go in a drawer somewhere, back in the halfway room she'd been assigned when she first came back. But that room had emptied faster than her discharge papers, and the letter had followed. By the third morning, Harper had fallen into something resembling rhythm. She rose early, before the sun had decided whether to shine, brewed the coffee, shoveled the walk. She was quiet, but not trying to disappear. Not anymore. Rosie had begun to treat her like furniture she liked, always there, always warm. She dragged Harper into her routines with gentle insistence, picking out mittens, lining up cereal boxes like they were soldiers, declaring the living room a no-sadness zone during cartoons. Harper followed. Not because she was trying to belong, but because not following felt colder. Caleb didn't hover. He was present the way an old house is, steady, weathered, familiar. He didn't ask about the letter. But sometimes, when she caught him watching her limp down the porch steps or pause too long at the kitchen window, she wondered if he sensed the weight she carried wasn't just in her step. One afternoon, after helping Caleb split wood behind the garage, Harper took off her coat and draped it over a chair. Rosie, in search of a missing crayon, tugged it aside. The letter slipped out, floated down like a slow feather. She picked it up. "Is this yours?" Harper froze, axe halfway into the block. She turned, fast enough that Caleb, stacking logs nearby, looked up. Rosie held out the letter, innocent, unopened, her eyes curious but not prying. Just a child seeing paper. Harper walked over, wiped her hands, took it gently. "Yeah," she said softly. "It's mine." Rosie squinted at the front. "Why's it not to anyone? It was meant to be thrown away. But you kept it." Harper nodded once. "I guess I did." Caleb didn't say anything. But later, when Rosie was back inside and the sky had begun to bruise with dusk, he approached as she sat on the porch step, letter in hand. "I don't have to know what's in it," he said. "But it looks like something you wrote before you knew what tomorrow would be." She looked at him sideways. "I didn't think I'd make it back. Most of us didn't. You did." Her fingers tightened. "Some days I wish I hadn't." The silence between them didn't flinch. Caleb didn't look away. "You ever tell Rosie that?" Harper blinked, surprised. "No. God, no." "Then maybe don't tell yourself either." She stared out at the trees. The wind moved through the branches like breath. "I wrote it in a motel 2 days after I landed. I'd missed 3 connecting buses. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just folded myself in." She tapped the letter. "This was the only thing I managed to get out." "Want me to read it?" he asked. Not eager. Just offering. She shook her head. "Not yet." That night, Harper helped Rosie clean the crayon drawer. They sat cross-legged on the kitchen floor, sorting broken colors from full ones. Rosie handed her a sharp red. "This one's for emergency feelings," she whispered. "Only when you can't say things out loud." Harper pocketed it like a talisman. "I'll remember that." In the following days, she became more than a guest. She repaired the fence post Caleb had meant to fix for months. Rewired a flickering outlet in the laundry room. Recocked the kitchen window where cold crept in. Caleb watched her in quiet increments. Not as someone observing, but as someone grateful. The kind of gratitude that doesn't need thanks. One afternoon, Harper found herself alone in the house. Caleb had taken Rosie to the library. The quiet wasn't heavy, just different, like something was waiting. She walked into the guest room, sat on the bed, and unfolded the letter. To whom it may concern. I'm not asking for a medal. I'm not even asking for space. I just need somewhere quiet to stop shaking. I came back with pieces I don't recognize. I look at my hands and wonder what they remember that I don't. I don't know how to sit still. I don't know how to breathe in a room without checking the corners. I don't know where I go next. If I'm being honest, I wasn't sure I'd make it this far. But I did. And now, I don't know what to do with that. She folded it again, slowly, then reached into the drawer of the nightstand and left it there. Not hidden. Not offered. Just placed. That evening, during dinner, Rosie asked her the kind of question children think are small but carry weight. Do you have a family? Harper hesitated. I did. Where are they now? Gone. Rosie chewed on her biscuit. Did they leave you, or did they disappear? Harper thought about that. Some left. Some disappeared. Some I left behind. Caleb set down his fork. The air shifted, not uncomfortably, but with a kind of quiet respect. Rosie nodded slowly. Maybe we can be a little family. Just for now. Harper didn't answer. But her eyes went glassy, and she had to excuse herself for a moment longer than was polite. That night, she didn't just read Rosie a bedtime story, she told her one. A memory, softened at the edges. About a dog she'd known on base, scrappy and smarter than anyone expected. Rosie listened wide-eyed, absorbing every detail. When the story ended, Rosie reached up and hugged her neck. You should write it down, she whispered sleepily. So it doesn't disappear too. Harper lingered in the hallway afterward. Caleb passed her a cup of tea, wordless. She leaned against the wall and sipped slowly, cradling the warmth like something sacred. You're good with her, he said. I don't know what I'm doing. None of us do. We just keep showing up. Harper nodded. Showing up's harder than it sounds. I know. The snow had started again by the time they finished the tea. Outside, the world grew quiet beneath it, as if even the trees were listening. Caleb looked toward the window. They offered you something yet? Harper's jaw tensed. Temporary housing. In town. It's a place. You going to take it? I don't know. Do you want to stay here? She didn't speak right away. I don't know that either. Then don't rush. She looked at him. You trust people too easily. No, he said. I just know when they're trying. She smiled, faint and fleeting. I don't know what I'm trying to be. Maybe just try being here. She looked at her hands. No shaking. Just stillness. Later, she climbed back up to the guest room and opened the drawer where she'd left the letter. It was still there, exactly where she'd placed it. She unfolded it once, then twice. Added one sentence to the bottom. Today, I was asked if I wanted to stay. I didn't know the answer. But I didn't say no. Then she folded it again and returned it to the drawer. Outside, the snow blanketed the yard, soft and clean and new. The call came on a Wednesday morning. Not dramatic. Just a number lighting up Harper's borrowed phone while she was folding laundry in the living room. Caleb was outside chopping wood. Rosie was upstairs narrating some battle between her dolls and an imaginary raccoon army. Harper answered without emotion, her voice a practiced flatness. Yes. A pause. Then a voice on the other end, administrative, polite, far away. The shelter placement had opened. Warm bed. 3 meals. Privacy. A small stipend. A chance. She thanked them. Said she'd come the next day. When she hung up, the world felt quieter than before. The dryer hummed behind her, indifferent. That night, Harper cooked dinner. Caleb didn't ask why. Rosie clapped at the novelty of Harper's stew and demanded the recipe before she'd taken a single bite. At the table, Harper was more talkative than usual. Not loud, just present. She laughed at one of Rosie's made-up riddles. She teased Caleb about his overuse of salt. Her smile was real, though it didn't reach her eyes. Caleb watched her. Not suspicious. Just knowing. After Rosie had gone to bed, Harper stood in the doorway of her room and looked in for a long time. The stuffed bear still sat on the pillow. A crayon drawing, one Rosie had redone, now with a sun and 3 big smiling figures, was pinned on the wall. Caleb came up the stairs, saw her standing there. "You're leaving," he said. Harper didn't turn. "Tomorrow." He leaned against the doorframe. "Why?" She sighed. "Because it's the right thing. I don't belong here." "Says who?" "No one," she said. "That's the problem. No one ever says. They just start to look tired." "I'm not tired." She turned to him, eyes soft. "You're kind, Caleb. And Rosie. Rosie's the kind of good that can make you believe again. But this isn't my life. I've just been visiting." "You sure?" "No," she whispered. "But I've never been sure about anything, and look where that's gotten me." They didn't argue. Caleb didn't plead. He just nodded. Then said, "At least let us take you to the stop." The next morning, Rosie didn't speak much. She held Harper's hand the whole ride. In her lap was a folded napkin. Same one as before, redrawn again. The stick Harper now had a dog beside her and a star above her head. When they arrived, Harper stepped out slowly. The same spot she'd stood in that first day, when the wind had stripped everything down to bone. She turned to Rosie first. Bent low. "I'm going to write you a letter," Harper said. "Promise. Promise." Rosie hugged her with everything she had. Then reached into her coat and slipped the drawing into Harper's pocket. "In case you forget what you look like to us." Harper didn't trust herself to speak. Caleb stood behind the truck. Hands in his jacket. Face unreadable. "I don't know how to say thank you," she said. "Then don't. Just come back if you need to." "I might." He nodded. "We'll leave the porch light on." The bus came early. She stepped toward it. The doors hissed open. Then Harper hesitated. Wind tugged at her coat. Her hand went to the letter in her pocket. Not the old one, the new one she'd started the night before. She turned. Caleb didn't move. Rosie was already watching her, eyes wide and uncertain. The driver called out, "Last call." Harper stepped back from the curb. The doors closed. The bus pulled away. She walked to the truck, climbed in. No one spoke. When they pulled into the driveway, the sky had begun to snow again, fat, lazy flakes drifting like time slowed down. Later that afternoon, Harper fixed a loose hinge on the barn door. Caleb shoveled the walk. Rosie built a snow raccoon and declared it queen of the fort. That night, Harper lit a candle in the guest room, took out the letter, finished it. "To whom it may concern. I found a place I didn't know I was missing. Not a shelter. Not a house. Just a room with voices that don't ask too much and hands that don't take. I still don't sleep through the night. But I no longer wake afraid. That's something. I think I've been gone long enough." She folded it, placed it in the drawer beside the first one. Then she opened a blank page. The letter to Rosie began. "Dear kiddo, you were right about the red crayon. It's good for emergency feelings. Today, I used it to draw our snow raccoon. It's awful, but it made me smile." Downstairs, someone laughed. The light spilled under her door. The house, without saying so, had made room. If this story touched you, subscribe or share where you're watching from.